Howdy. Good evening. I'm Warren Finch, the director of the George Bush Presidential Library and Museum. With us tonight is Taya Kyle, who will discuss her most recent book, American Spirit, Profiles in Resilience, Courage, and Faith. But before I introduce to the stage, we've got a short video we would like to show.
Chris Kyle Frog Foundation is dedicated to strengthening military and first responder families. Our mission is to serve those who serve us by providing meaningful, interactive experiences that enrich family relationships, because we know that when one person serves, the whole family unit serves. Through custom retreats, we'll provide time and space for couples to reconnect, to help them create new common ground and help them generate power to return to the family unit. We believe that most people do not need handouts, but they do need hand-ups. Just a little opportunity and strategic help. With your support, we can lend that hand up to military and first responder couples at a time when they need it most, treating them to experiences they could not otherwise afford. Chris won many battles, but perhaps one of the most important was the one we fought side by side, the battle to preserve our marriage and our family after he served our country. We want other couples to win that fight. After all they've done for our country, they deserve it. To learn more about how you can support the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation and help serve those who serve us, please visit chriskylefrogfoundation.org. Thank you, and God bless.
I'd like to recognize a few people in the audience tonight. We have Jim Olson and his wife Meredith. Jim is a professor from the Bush School of Government and Public Service. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Eleanor Green, Dean of the Veterinary Medicine at Texas A&M University. My colleague and deputy, Bob Holzweiss, is here. And then Judge Smith is here. Taya Kyle is the widow of late U.S. Navy SEAL sniper Chris Kyle. Following the murder of her husband, Taya formed the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation, where she volunteers her time as executive director. The foundation continues Chris's legacy, serving God, country, and family. Taya's position of changing the world by fighting for marriages of those who fought for us is having a dramatic impact for military and first responder couples and their children. With a team of people behind the mission, the Chris Kyle Frog Foundation is helping families not only survive their life of service, but thrive. She resides in Texas, where she is first and foremost a woman after God's heart and a mother of her 2 children. She is a public speaker, inspiring others to find light in the midst of darkness in a fallen world. As she articulates the trials and tribulations of love, war, faith, and renewal, she helps others see they are not alone. She is also a Fox News contributor, author, and is currently working on 2 television projects. If you'd like to ask a question tonight, I have interns. They'll be passing out cards. Please write your question down on a card. They will collect them. And then there'll be time at the end of the program for questions. And then also she will be signing books also after the program. So please welcome to the stage Taya Kyle.
Hello, how are you? So, good, I like it. So I almost feel sorry for you. We could just wrap up the whole talk right now because the intro had to be so long. You know, it's like it took up all the 30 minutes I have. Thank you, Warren. That was a lot. I didn't realize there was so much they sent to you to introduce me. So, I decided to do something totally different tonight. I usually do something different for every crowd, but this time I'm going totally in a different direction, and I'm excited about it, so hopefully you like it. But I was thinking about the American Spirit, the book, and one of the questions that I get asked a lot is sort of explaining why bad things happen to good people, right? And it occurs to me that that's something that you might all like to ponder a little bit with me. And I think the truth is that bad things happen to all people. We just don't know it, right? We don't know the inside and what's going on. And the people we might classify as bad people typically have had a lot of bad things happen in their life too before they got to that point. Maybe nobody showed up for them. I don't believe in excuses personally. I think we're all accountable for our own actions. But I notice the vast difference when people do show up for others. When in your pain and in your tragedy, somebody else has the courage to just show up. It helps you build that resilience, helps you build courage. So I'll go through a little bit of that with you. I want to talk about endurance and then just kind of wrap up with a little bit of, I think, something we can all take going forward. And so I want to start with, I'm in the right place, I know, first of all, in College Station to talk about my faith. Warren, we talked about that a little bit. I usually tell people before I start talking about it that we have freedom of religion, not freedom from religion. And so I love getting out and saying, look, people can have their own religion. I'm fine with that. I don't judge them for that either. I have friends of different religions. I have mine. And I can't tell my story without talking about my faith because it truly is such a large part of who I am. And I think it's a freedom that we don't exercise enough and people don't understand enough. Freedom of religion. That means we get to talk about it and include it no matter what religion we are, right? So I'll break this down a little bit very simply, and that is that I was raised Episcopalian, and then there was a time in middle school and high school that I didn't want to go to church because I wanted to sleep in. And my mom was all about that. She was fine with that. And my dad and my older sister went to church. I felt God from a very early age. I felt like I wanted to do something for him in my life, but at that time I was thinking, well, girls don't really do that. And not that we can't do anything, by the way. I'm all about, I feel like women have been strong forever. I don't know, I don't see the problem lately. I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I'm like, my great-grandmother was working, you know, my mom's a strong woman. They raised me, I could do anything. It never occurred to me that I couldn't do whatever I wanted to do in this great country of ours. But, okay, I'm already off track. Let me come back. You'll notice there's a little ADD going on here. We'll have a lot of fun. Just ride the roller coaster with me. So with that, I got into my early 20s, and I really never liked the idea of evil or Satan or anything like that. I just couldn't get my head around it. And I certainly knew there was evil in the world, but I wasn't really convinced that there were people who really chose it and that there was really a dark force out there and there was a spiritual battle going on in a different realm. But I started studying it a lot more in my life with Chris, and after his murder, I got the chance to talk to some academics and people who have studied it deeply and could break things down for me. And so I'll give you sort of my very broken down version of what my understanding of this life is, and I like to put it in a simple term. I see this life as it did start with God, and it did start with a fallen angel, and basically Satan said to God, you ain't all that, and God said, okay, how about this? I'll create earth, and I will put my beloved souls there, and you go your hardest. I'll give you a wide, long leash. And I will prove to you that they will still seek me, find me, believe in me, and know me without even having the ability to see me. And so I think it plays out like a chess game, right? And so it's God and Satan, and there are a lot of pawns on the board, and we're the pawns, right? A lot of times we're the pawns. And so we see somebody make a move on the chessboard, and we think, oh my gosh, like Satan's got this one, this is bad, this is real bad, and he's like, check. And then God comes in, and he moves a couple things because he's already got this planned out, and he's 5 or 6 steps ahead. And every time Satan says check, God says, checkmate, mother. No, okay. Just making sure just trying to make sure you're paying attention. Mm-hmm. But really, if I could say something to him, sometimes I think that's what I'd like to say, right? But I think that's basically how that moves, and we have to understand, like when I was talking to my son about it, he said, yeah, Mom, chess is a game of sacrifice and gain. There will be gains and there will be sacrifices for all of us. And I think that somewhere in that chess game of life, we have to recognize that 1 Peter, verse 1, 6 through 9, I think, that talks about your trials and tribulations should be treated with great joy because they produce endurance. I thought that was a load of crap. Did anybody else think that when they first heard that? I was thinking, there's no way I'm going to look at a trial or a tribulation and be like, yay, this is great. So I really pondered that too. And I've seen a lot of beauty come through it. I've seen that there really is something to that. When you think of a little kid, I sometimes have this, I'm a very visual person. And so I think of a little kid with a yellow truck, like a Tonka truck or something. And, if something happens to that, and that's his favorite toy in the whole world, and something happens to it, he's devastated. He's on the floor crying, right? It's horrible. And we can say, oh my gosh, stop, whatever. But we have to be compassionate enough, I think, to say, yes, that's horrible. Let me help you get through this and understand that that is not the worst thing that will happen to you. And you are strong enough to take this, and we can keep moving forward, right? That's God. I was thinking, when I was thinking about talking to you today, I thought about this moment I had with my dad that I recognized something different. I was an adult, I had kids, we were back visiting, and he said, oh, would you look at that? There's a drip in the roof. And he gets a bucket, right? And he goes over and he does that, and I went, Dad? Like, you're not even stressing. Like, the dad I grew up with would have been like, oh, are you kidding me? Something else is going wrong, and he never cussed, but he, would get pretty upset about something like that. And I said, so what's up with that? You're just kind of taking it in stride. And he said, oh, Taya, I just learned in life that owning a house, this is just part of it. It's really not that big a deal, right? And I was thinking, that's wisdom, experience, that's endurance. And there is joy in that. There's joy for anybody around him, and there's joy in that for him, because guess what? That doesn't get to ruin his day, right? He's a more peaceful, happy guy because of it. And so when I look at that in a spiritual realm, I see that God is this amazing, loving Father, and he sees us, I think, a lot of times as those children of his who have a lot to learn, and we see some things, and we don't have faith that there's a chess game playing out in front of us, so we see something that devastates us, and we think, why? This is the end, or something like that, right? And we're frustrated, or we're mad. And I look back at my life, and I think, this loving Father took care of me. I can look back and say, he knew that I was going to have an amputation, right? And I think the loss of Chris for me was an amputation. It was losing part of myself, the part that I loved probably more than anything. Sometimes was very, very angry with and stuff, right? That's marriage. You can't be married forever and not have that, especially in a service marriage. So I knew, God knew ahead of time that somebody would make a choice for evil, right? And he promises free will to all of us. Not just those of us who make good decisions, it's to all of us. So somebody was going to choose evil and take Chris's life. So what would you do if it was your child? If it were my child and they were going to have an amputation, that I couldn't do anything about, right? I would prepare them ahead of time the best I could. I would get all the information, I would teach them, we would plan a little bit ahead, I'd try to get them ready to go so that when it actually happened, they had the best chance for success. I would also be with them during the amputation, and I would certainly be with them after, and I would try to show them how great their life can be in spite of the horrors that came, right? In spite of losing something that they couldn't imagine losing. And I see that as God, because when I look back at my life, I think I was a very fearful person when I met Chris. I was bold, I was a risk taker, and all of those things, but I had this other side to me that was afraid. Not of everything, but of some things. I lived on a third-story apartment building. I bought a condo in Southern California, Long Beach, before I met Chris. And it was gated with a garage, but it was still, right next to the rough part of Long Beach. That's what I could afford. And I thought, somebody's going to come up and kill me. I had a dog and a phone and car keys to set an alarm off if I needed it, and 500 other things in my room with me. I was scared. And I look at the way I've gone so full circle here, right? To a place where I am okay with that situation now, and I wasn't okay then. I didn't want to accept how evil things were and people could be. Chris's time in the military showed me how evil people can be. The stories of the savage behavior that they had overseas, the things that people would do to children, including burning their eyeballs with cigarettes so they couldn't identify who sodomized them. To a child. That's somebody making a real choice for evil. That's evil succeeding, right? So once I got to accept that, and I look back at my life and I think when Chris first left, I had anxiety, I was terrified I would lose him. I never knew that a guy like him existed in the world, right? He was a cowboy, never hit a horse, loved puppies. Children loved him. He was kind. He was sensitive to me. He was romantic. He was a good old boy. He was humble. He could kill people with his little finger. No, I'm just kidding. But it is kind of comforting to know that somebody's, when they've got your back, they really got your back, right? So there were all of these things, and I thought, what a package. And he came from prayer too. That's another story, but he was one of the first big things that I really let go and gave to God and said, God, you choose for me. You choose for me. All I want is somebody nice. That's really it. Didn't care what he looked like, didn't care how old he was, nothing else, just I wanted a good person. And I did not think that Chris was it when I first met him, but I learned in time. So I learned that, okay, so God gives me this amazing package, and I'm terrified that I'm going to lose him. And I start having these weird things of anxiety, like where he's gone and I want to sleep with the lights on in my room. I'm a grown woman, but it made sense at the time. Or I'd get really jumpy before he'd leave because I wanted to be strong. He's going to be okay. I wanted to have that right mindset. But the anxiety came anyway. And I started turning my fear into faith. I started to get stronger. When I had my first kid, which, by the way, I'll tell you a funny, do I have time? Yeah, I'll tell you a little funny side story. So when Chris was first leaving, he said, and it was just the two of us married, and he said, okay, babe, listen, here's the gun, here's the pistol, and I was like, you don't even have to show me, honestly. He said, no, I want to show you. And I said, the truth is, if somebody comes into this house, I'm probably either going to hide in the closet or jump over the railing, and run. Like, I'm not going to shoot anybody. Not that I'm against anybody else doing it, I just don't think I have it in me, right? So second deployment comes, and now I have my newborn, and he's 10 days old, right? And so as Chris leaves, I said, hey, babe, I think you need to get one of your friends to take me to the gun range, because let me tell you something. Somebody comes in this house, I'm going to put all the rounds in them. It's going to be a real tight grouping, and it's going to be over, right? I mean, nobody's hurting this kid, right? It's a whole different ball game. So anyway, I turned my fear into faith, and I had to keep doing it. When my daughter was born, and I had Chris left 10 days after my son was born, and 2 days after my daughter was born. They were 18 months apart, and I was stressed to the hilt, and I started to feel sorry for myself sometimes, honestly. Like, this is too much. I had a C-section on my second one, and so now I'm in a lot of pain, and my mom came down for a little bit, but I've got a toddler who's running around and an infant, and I'm sliced open, and, I'm thinking this is horrible, and I'm worried about my husband, and little bit by little bit, I got stronger. My endurance built up. I didn't enjoy that process, but what I do enjoy is the fact that I am so much stronger than I was then. So I look at that and I think, okay, so God prepared me how to turn my fear into faith. I started to learn how to defend myself when my husband was gone. I started to learn how to be a single parent when I needed to be. I learned that not all of our memories would be our memories. That really hurts, as you can tell, it still hurts. But that was one of the things I hated when he was gone, is they're not our memories, they're mine. And so I can't look at you and say, do you remember when he did this or she did that? I can for the times he was home, but there were those large chunks where he wasn't. And I had to come to terms with that's okay. Because at the end of the day, this is my life. From cradle to grave, I've got God. That's it. Nobody else is guaranteed. I had to come to terms with that had to be enough. That relationship I had with God had to be enough. So that when the amputation came, I was prepared in so many ways. I don't think I could have made it had I not been prepared. Truly, I don't think I would have made it. I don't think I would have gotten to the point of taking my own life, but I just can't imagine, I should say that, where I would be able to do it. So I see God preparing me ahead of time for all that was to come, because when it came, it still took the rug out from under me. It still blindsided me. It still knocked me sideways. But I had seen widows go before me. I had gone to the funerals and thought, how is this woman going to make it? And why isn't the world stopping for her? This is I still had to go get groceries after I'd go to a funeral, and I'd think, I can't believe I'm at the grocery store and her world is demolished. But I had kids to feed and things that we needed to get done. The world kept turning. So with all of that, it almost was like when they told me that Chris was killed, I almost felt like, it's here. Like my number came up almost. And I had sort of this idea of what was to come because I had already watched my friends go through it. I knew how it was to be alone. Having said that, it devastated me. It rocked my world. I still feel a little weepy about it sometimes. And I would trade it all. But I cannot miss the fact that I feel that God prepared me in some ways, knowing the amputation was to come. And he's been with me afterwards. So my faith has built up. And after that, I thought, here's the next step for me. I've always been goal-oriented, ambitious, fast-moving. I think I was born with my foot on a gas pedal somewhere, When my mom asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, my first things were a 6'2" quarterback in the NFL. I don't know why, that was just my answer. And a race car driver. And by the way, she never told me I couldn't. See what I mean? I'm telling you, my mom's, get it, girl. Maybe you'll be the first one. So I don't know if that was good or bad, but anyway. And so I'm strong. Where was I now? Now I went off on my quarterback thing. So I look at my life and I say, okay, God prepared me. I'm a strong enough woman to take it. I can get through this. And it devastated me. It rocked my world. I'm goal-oriented. I'm ambitious. And I've got projects to finish for Chris. He was in the middle of writing American Gun. The rough draft to the movie American Sniper was turned in the day before he was killed. So I started working with the scriptwriter Jason Hall right after that. And we worked for tons of hours talking about Chris and all of that. He was involved in a lawsuit. He already knew things were going south with his company, and it was not a good thing, and that we needed to address it. And so I had that on my shoulders. And then my kids. He was the most amazing father. The most amazing father. So they're destroyed and devastated. But they even had a little bit of prep in knowing our friends died and what our beliefs were. So they a little bit knew who they were and what we stood for and what our beliefs were before that happened. And I couldn't get through a day without a few crying bouts, to say the least, right? But I was going to keep going full speed. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything. I just kind of ran myself into the ground for the first year because that's what I knew to do. And in some ways that felt like a blessing. But I couldn't handle all of it. It was too much. So with that burden and everything being there and me not being able to do it all, I had to start saying, okay, God, I trust that you're going to let me know or tell me what to pay attention to or take care of things. So I started, when something would not work, I started saying, well, then I can't do it. I got to go to this because I'm hitting my head against a wall here, so I'm going to move on to this thing. And what I would notice is a couple months later, maybe 4 months later, 2 months, somewhere down the line, all of a sudden a little piece would fall in. And that thing that I was banging my head against the wall then just fell into place. So with that happening over and over, and with starting a foundation for marriage, which, by the way, I didn't think was, we wanted to do it, I wanted to do it, but I thought there's no way in the first year. I just told you all of these other things that are going on. How could I possibly do that? And I had 3 or 4 reasons why I couldn't, and they'd all just kind of fall in my lap. One person after another. I remember the last one fell in, and I thought, seriously? You really want me to do this right now? And the beauty of it is I say, well, it's always been God's mission. I'm just being faithful and trying to follow it because he put it in my, there's no denying there were pieces that fell in place that I couldn't not do it then, so we started it then. And what I realized is I can be goal-oriented and I can be ambitious, but I also can be faithful and watch God play these things out for me. And I think we're all in a really busy world right now, and I think that you can all try this and see how it works for you, but I have an example right now of, I have a friend who says, my friend Bill Wayburn, he's the sheriff of Tarrant County, amazing man, super Christian, and he says, and he's been a police chief for 31 years, he's been a sheriff for a few years, he was in the Air Force before that, he's really done a lot in this life, and he's still going. And he says every morning he gets up and puts his feet on the floor and says, every morning I know trouble's coming, but I know who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe in. Who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe in, right? And I thought about that. I thought, that's really good because trouble's coming. And by the way, it's coming for all of us. That was not that barrage of hits that I took in the first few years was not all the hits. I'm going to have more. But I don't really worry so much anymore, really at all, because I think God's always been there for me before. Why wouldn't he be here for me now, right? So in that, I have more joy. So with knowing those things that my friend Bill told me about, I had to make some tough decisions. When I had a Fox News contract, they had a home studio for me, and I enjoyed doing it. I came up for renewal, And I had to go back to that, who I am, what I stand for, and what I believe in. And I told myself when first my kids traveled with me, and we had a teacher, and we did homeschool. So there was a teacher who traveled with us for a couple years, and that's how I made my living, and it worked really well. And I got to run away from my life a little bit and just be busy and make, a living. And then it came time to come and settle back in. And I said, I won't be away from my kids more than 2 or 3 nights a month. I won't. And the Fox News contract would have required me to do that, and they needed me nights and mornings at the home studio, and that was my kid time. So I know who I am, what I stand for, what I believe in, and that didn't fit. I still cried. I still felt like, man, I hope I'm not an idiot. It seems like a pretty good thing a foundation to build if you ever want a career after your kids go to college. But I had to have faith. I prayed about it, and I felt God saying, let it go. So I let it go. And I don't regret it. I know I would regret not having the time with my kids. Just today, as I was coming up here, I'm telling you this part of it because I want you to know that I can get up here and say it, but I'm human, and I'm still who I am, and we all are still going to have these battles no matter how much we know we should be doing something over here, right? But I have my children's book series. It's coming out this fall. Super excited. It's been a passion of mine for a long time. It's faith-based. Couldn't believe it's all coming to fruition. I found there were a bunch of things that didn't quite go the way I thought they would, and finally it's all coming together. I got this awesome self-publishing house behind me. We signed the contract. And this week, actually just today, I found out that there were 2 options. And by the way, there were a lot of things that were put off. I mean, things like the guy said he emailed me, and by the way, I think he's a really good guy. I was like, where is it? I don't know where it is. Or he'd do something, and I'd be like, I don't know, where is it? And it just kept seeming like we were being prohibited, and I thought, I don't know, maybe it's Satan doing it, because I can't explain why all these things are going wrong and we keep getting pushed off. So I get to the point today where I learned that I have a couple of options. I can do it one way, and the quality might not be as good. It'll take people 1 to 3 weeks to get it when they order it. Or I can do it with a higher quality. People will get it right away. It's a little bit more arduous in process, but I will not be able to get it out this year. Or if I did, it would be in December. And I guess, do people buy children's books in December? Yes? Okay, well, maybe I will. I don't know then, because they were saying that that's like a blackout period and people don't. But I was thinking it's a perfect Christmas gift, right, for kids. Okay, I'm counting on you when it comes out then. Follow me on social media so that I can tell you the book's here. I'm going to be remembering your face. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so I'm glad to hear that, very glad to hear that. But what happened was I was in the car talking to one of my friends who's very faithful, and I said, you know what? I don't know what to do. And she said, will you be happy with the quality not being what you want? No. And I said, and you know what? I wouldn't order something that took me that long because I wait too long. You know what I mean? If I need something, I need it now because I forgot about it. Chances are to get it to somebody. So I said, okay, well, I've been feeling all along like God's saying not now, but that doesn't make sense to me because it's a book on faith, and why wouldn't I get it out at prime time, and all these other things. And I had to check myself, right? I know this. I just told you. I learned this the hard way all the way through, all those months, all those years, and I still have an issue sometimes remembering it. She's like, well, pray about it. And I said, you know what? I will, but I already know because I've been hearing it for like the last month. Wait. And I've been like, no, I want to do this. So I say that to tell you, I know it's not easy to do what I'm saying, but I do think it's worth it. I do think in the chess game of life, we have a choice every single time, and we're all going to get hit with more bad things. But how do we see that? I wrote American Spirit because when I was out traveling and doing the thing with my kids, and people were telling me amazing stories of resilience, things that they were doing for other people. Either they had gone through a super hard time, like Sean over here, who's super inspiring too, and finds a way to persevere and do something good with it, inspire people, or they would show up for somebody else. Some of them didn't want to, there are kids in there, they just wanted to do one right thing. And it turned into somebody else going, I like that one thing, I want to be a part of that one thing. And all of a sudden it grows, right? So you don't have to think you're starting a movement, you just do one right thing, and sometimes it turns into that. And it always matters, there's a ripple effect to it. So as I was traveling the country and hearing these stories, I thought, why is it that every time we turn on the news, it's the loudest person on either side of the political realm who's saying what maybe not everybody else thinks, but it's interesting because it's way out there. That's what we hear all the time. We all kind of get this impression that the sky is falling and that our country is falling apart. And yet when I'm traveling the country, I'm seeing people like you in College Station who are awesome, polite, amazing people, loving each other regardless of what your political beliefs are, or maybe not talking about it, and carrying on with your life, right? And I wanted to expose that. I wanted to share that because it inspired me and it helped me heal. I needed to see that there's a lot of this in the world. And so I hope that when you read the book, you'll see that there are children doing good things. There are sports players. I purposely chose someone in the NFL because I know a lot of times, we have to challenge our own set of like, all those guys are doing this. They're not all doing this. Some of them are out there doing really great things. In fact, the majority of them are, as I've learned. And I wanted to get a cross-section of the country because people are doing good things, and they're building it out of bad things. Every time the darkness came, for every single person in that book, somebody had courage, somebody took that leap of faith, and they built up resilience. That whole Bible verse that I'm talking about, it's true. The things that bothered me years ago don't bother me now. I'm not affected. When something happens now that would have been catastrophic before, I go, okay. I mean, for the most part, I get frustrated sometimes when it's all happening at one time, but for the most part, I'm good. I mean, I used to stress if my kids didn't have all the right organic stuff, or like if we ate fast food too often, and now it's like, if we have to have fast food, we have to have fast food, whatever. I'm glad Chris had Whataburger in the last week of his life, right? He loved it, and I could have stressed about his cholesterol, but I'm glad he had it. So you guys want to hear a funny story about bacon before I wrap up? I'm going totally up. Okay. I was just thinking about Whataburger. I told you, this is how my mind goes. So we're newly married, and I was making loaded baked potatoes. This is before I had kids. So I was taking the bacon and cutting all the fat off the bacon and getting just the meaty parts in there, and I was going to surprise Chris when he came home. It was going to be amazing. So he comes home, and I've got the whole thing laid out, and he walks over to there's like about, I don't know, probably 1.5 pounds of fat on a paper towel, so I cut it off, and he comes out, and he's like, oh, bacon. And I'm like, no, babe, that's just the fat, right? And he says, yeah, no, the fat's good, right? And puts it in there. I'm like, okay, but like I got the good stuff over here or whatever. You don't have to eat that. I walk out of the room, came back 4 or 5 minutes later, max, and I see that the paper towels soaked in grease are there, but the mound of bacon fat is not. It's like, please tell me you threw that in the trash. Please tell me that's in the trash. And he was like, this is good. I mean, I used to worry about his sunscreen and skin cancer and, all these things, because there's always maybe a part of me that just felt like maybe he's too good to be true. Maybe I don't get this for as long as I want it. I don't know. And you know what? It ended up being true, but thank God I was married to him because he was still going to eat the bacon fat and he still wasn't going to wear sunscreen, and I had to learn to let it go. He really helped me in a million ways learn how to turn my fear into faith, and I'm glad that I did. And I hope that you do, and I hope that when something comes your way, that there's a part of this that you either read in the Stories in American Spirit or you remember something from today, and you really do start to say, I could take that challenge. It's a chess game, right? And if there's a pawn that's moved in front of you and it looks like it's about to be, checked, just remember somebody's behind the check saying, checkmate, mother, right? You got this. God's with you. You've got this. You will build more endurance. You will build more strength. You will be more courageous tomorrow than you were yesterday if you have another challenge that hits. So we're almost like athletes in life. When the challenge hits, okay, I'll climb that fence, right? And those days when you can't and you want to take a nap or cover your head, do that, but then get back up and face the challenge, because it really can be treated with some sense of joy. The more struggle I've had, the more I let go, really, the happier I have become. I am a happier person in general than I was before in different ways, right? I mean, my family life is different, and that makes me very sad still, and I have these things. But in general, day-to-day living, I'm a happier person because things just don't get to me as much as they used to. And I hope after tonight that you have a little bit of that feeling too. I appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So a couple questions.
Okay.
So there are 30 stories in the book.
Yes.
Which maybe is the most inspiring that you'd just like to talk a little bit about without giving the book away?
Yeah, I won't give the book away, but I've got to tell you, I'm so inspired by all of them. But there was one, Alex's Lemonade Stand. Do you remember that a long time ago? Okay, and so this little girl has cancer, and she's bold, and she says she's going to raise all this money. And she does. She raises $1 million, and more. And so the reason I put this story in there is there's a kid, it happens to be Jim DeFelice, who wrote American Sniper and American Wife with me. He wrote American Spirit 2 with me. And he his nephew was at school online. He wasn't alive when the story of Alex's lemonade stand first hit. And he sees something pop up about Alex's lemonade stand because they still have a foundation going. And he says, oh, that's a good idea. And there's a little bit of a ripple that starts around him. And I thought that's important because, that's another story of darkness. Alex doesn't live, right? But her spirit does. And there's more good happening, and it will happen for decades. And for you and I, we may never get to see the ripple effect of what we do in this world, but it does matter. Every single time it matters. One of the reasons I have a foundation for marriage is watching my parents and their friends go through hard times and come out not just surviving their marriage, but truly thriving. They go on vacations. I see them when I go back and visit. They love each other. They're hanging out. There's lots of couples. My parents are very social, and they're all making it, and they're thriving. They may not have known that they were just doing their thing, but it inspired me. And it helps me say, whatever is going on in your life, in your marriage, especially in a service marriage, if you want it to work, we can help you. So that's one. But guys, there's so many other good stories. I could talk for a long time. Yeah. There's a guy that trains wild Mustangs to treat PTSD up in Montana, and he's from New York originally. Crazy. So cool.
All right. So everyone has crises in faith, even Mother Teresa. So how do you deal with those?
The doubtful times?
Yes.
Okay, that's actually really interesting that you said that because I was starting to have that the last couple of weeks. Yes, even Mother Teresa. I was having this last couple of weeks, I was telling my friend, I said, I don't know, something's off with me. I don't know what it is, but I'm like wanting to pray for something, but thinking, probably that's a little outside of the realm. And I know better. I've had the weirdest things that I've prayed for happen, And so I just started praying, and I said, God, can you just help me with this? I don't want to doubt. And then I had this moment of, but don't make it a big thing that you prove it to me with, right? I was like, maybe I don't want to pray for that. I won't doubt. I'll just do it on my own. But I did. I ended up praying, and there were really cool experiences that happened today, right after I prayed it, that just verified, validated, and I went, thank you so much for doing it in the small ways, and you're right, I'm back on track, and I'm good. But that's what I do is I honestly, I just pray, and I go, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening, but it's weird, and I can't identify it, and just help me with it,
Yes. So a question from the audience. Do you think faith is essential? And I'm sure you do, but can you talk about this a little bit? How is faith, I'll rephrase the question a little bit. How is faith essential to a service relationship or marriage?
Yeah, it's a great question because there are people who don't have faith. Plenty of them who are in the military and first responder communities. And I think that everybody has their own path. And if there are people around them, and I believe in the chess game that God is putting people around them that will highlight that for them and try to reach them. But I find that in a service marriage in particular, faith becomes such a gift that I think a lot of times when they see the success of the gift, they're attracted to it. The gift is that, for me, one of them was when I married Chris, I made a covenant with God in addition to Chris, and that helped me in the really hard times to say, I'm not going to break that. And I think that knowing that if it's their time kind of thing. I didn't like that when Chris was first in the military, but he was right. And we had to look at a lot of people who never should have been killed. It's their first time stepping out onto the battlefield, and there's an IED, and it kills them, and yet Chris is running down alleyways with bullets flying by his head, and he's not killed. It didn't make any sense. So I think a lot of times you start to explore faith when you have those kinds of experiences. And I also think that a lot of times people in the service, they're already kind of preconditioned to do things for the greater good, and to see that self-sacrifice it's worthy of them to offer up their life. And I think that mentality lends itself really well to finding God and understanding Jesus.
Can you talk about that a little bit? So we talk. A lot of people say, today's youth, but then we have these young men and women who they go and serve their country, and are we really in that bad a shape?
I love that question, and I need to find this article, but somebody was telling me about a newspaper article that was describing a generation from the past, and I'll tell you what that is in a minute. And they were saying they were lazy, they were overweight, I think, they weren't caring about academics or whatever. And the generation they were describing, that article, was the greatest generation, right? And so I think there is a part of us that always thinks the next generation is going to screw it up because they're always doing something different, and it doesn't make any sense to us. But what I've found is that there's this pendulum that swings. And so the internet, for example, I didn't think it was any accident that an atheist creates a company with the bite out of an apple that opens up the knowledge of good and evil into the world. And I was thinking, this is Pandora's box for our children and all this stuff. But then I think, well, no, there are Bible apps. And I mean, I just Googled that 1 Peter verse, upstairs. And there's a pendulum. Whatever is created, there's always going to be good. And I purposely put stories of kids in there. One of the kids, they were teenagers. And you'll read the story, but they're teenagers, and they were saying, I'm bored, what are we going to do? And they had a whiteboard, and they started writing ideas, and one of the ideas they had was help people. And it came out of something else. That's the generation that we could look at and say, those people are always on their phones, and they're never going to do anything right. They're not always on their phones. We might see them on their phones a lot, and some of them maybe, but just like the generation, if you think about the generation you're in, there were always the people that weren't going to do a lot with their lives. And there were always the people that were ambitious and were going to do it. And there was the middle ground. And, that hasn't changed. It's just going to be interesting to see how it unfolds. So I do have faith. And that is why I put it in there. Because there was a time where I was like, could customer service be any worse from this generation? You know what I mean? Like, if I ask a question and hear one more, I don't know. I'm like, you're an employee here, right? Go find out. I started to think, well, we're screwed, but now I don't think that, because now I've seen all these kids and I'm like, no, we're good. It's just they're
great stories. This is a unique university, and there are a lot of great kids here, but they're not just at this university. They're everywhere, and they're doing a lot of great things.
They really are. And I will say that A&M, this is the honest God truth. I came for a book signing, and I don't know when it was, a while ago, and I spoke to a bunch of them. And I was so impressed with the kids that went here, because there was something different about their so polite, eye contact, faithful, strong. I mean, it was like, yeah, these kids, there is something a little different about A&M kids. Yeah. They're pretty awesome. Yeah.
And there's a lot of faith at this university, yeah.
I mean, really, that's it, right? I don't think that's a coincidence that they have that. Yeah. I went to Grand Cayman, which I had never been there before anywhere in the Caribbean. I got this great opportunity to go there with my kids, and they were saying that there's really, no crime, and people don't worry about this and that. And I was like, what do you attribute that to? And she goes, well, there's also like a church on if you'll notice, it's a very Christian-centric island. And I thought, wow, that is the truth, right? I mean, if they have that much, I think it was 90% are church-going or Christian people. And I was like, well, that makes sense. I mean, it's not that you can be a Christian and screw up. And I believe even the guy who killed my husband, I mean, I believe as a Christian, I'm supposed to hope that he finds God and goes to heaven and finds forgiveness. That's not easy, but I'm just saying, in general, it works pretty well if you're committed to your
faith. Is that something you want to talk about, or would you?
I mean, I can. Yeah, I just opened that one, didn't I? No, I can. I can. I know there are a lot of people who ask me, have I forgiven him? And forgiveness is definitely something that I've explored a lot, not just for him, actually. It was probably more so for the people that were coming at me, and the lawsuits and the lies and the deceit and the things that people were putting out into the universe about. It was just crazy stuff. Or Chris and me, and I was asking my pastor about forgiveness, and he said, well, a lot of Christians mistake forgiveness. They think if you forgive somebody, that means they get to come back, or they get to be in your life, and that's not the case. You forgive somebody, and even God said that to the Israelites when they were wandering for 40 years. He said, my child, I forgave you the moment you did it, but that doesn't mean you get to come back. And so I truly don't know so much about forgiveness with that guy, because that's a hard leap for me to say, can I really forgive? Does that mean that it doesn't matter what we lost? But I can say that he doesn't take up any space in my mind. I want him to be in prison for the rest of his life. He deserves it. He earned it. And if he rots there, it's fine with me. I have zero. I don't have any desire to talk to him, see him. I mean, he just kind of like erase him from anything that enters into my realm, because I live with the result of his actions every day. So maybe that's a type of forgiveness, when you just have decided not to carry it with you, and I've decided not to hate, and I've decided not to carry anger or bitterness or anything else. Or maybe that's a shame that I haven't dealt with it more. I don't know the answer to that. But other people I have been able to forgive in a way that says, I forgive you because you're human and we're flawed, but I don't choose to have anything to do with you, or I'm not taking the abuse or whatever it is that we have to do. Was that kind of where you were going with that?
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Thank you. So what's it like to be an influencer? Your husband was an influencer. What's it like to get in front of a crowd of 600 people, or like last time you were here, I think you were at the Rudder Theater.
Yeah.
What is?
You know,
And to have an influence on people's lives.
so that's a great question. I recognized something that when Chris and I would talk around the house, we were pretty casual about the things that we felt, or if we felt really strongly about something, we might pop off about this or that, and it was like, yeah, I know, you know. And when he realized that he was starting to be in a position where he had influence, and by the way, he didn't want it. He didn't even want to write a book. It's kind of a long story. That's why he wanted to donate all the proceeds away. People were writing books about him, and so he decided to do it so he could say his flaws and not be made out to be something he's not, and recognize other people. So having said that, he started to change the way that he talked about things, because he realized that if he spews, casually pops off, let's say, about one thing or another, it has an influence, and that he had to be more responsible about what he said. And sometimes he'd still do stuff, but he really did work to try to tone it down. And I think I've also noticed that and thought, okay, there are times where somebody is, it's almost like they're baiting you. And I could take the bait. I'm human. I have reactions, or I have hurts or anger. And then I go, you know what? That's not, it kind of goes back to that thing my friend Bill said about know who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in. That's not what I stand for. Having a visceral, violent reaction like that you feel, what I believe in and what I stand for is having some grace and saying, you know what? You get to be you, and I get to not bring it into my space. And so I've learned that it's a skill, and I think that's part of it. As far as influencing people, I never know if I am, bless you, but I go out in faith. And I remember there was one time, that's a struggle. I don't know if you know that, but if you're going out to talk to people, like I can already critique what I did tonight and tell you what I wish I had done differently. And I mean, it plays in the back of my mind anyway. So I can go out and say this was not a perfect talk or whatever it is. And that part, I've recognized. There was a time I was in Oklahoma, and it was a weird thing because they were paying me well, but like they didn't advertise it. Hardly anybody was there. It was just a very weird thing. And I was laughing with that same girlfriend that I keep talking about, saying, yep, it's over. That's it. Nobody's interested anymore, because that was, And I got a letter from a woman who was there saying, you changed my whole life with this. And I was the woman, and she described it, and she said, I can't tell you how much I needed that. And I thought, you know what?
For the one person?
The one person. That's why. And so I think there's a part of, if you think you're an influencer and you're supposed to influence however many, I think that's not up to me. I think that's up to God. And I don't ever take myself too seriously. I don't ever pretend to know, I just show up, and I try to just be me, and hope that God's arranging the details for anybody that needs it. But that to me is the best way, because I think some of this social media, or trying to get a lot of followers, or trying somebody to pay you so you can influence that, that doesn't resonate with me, because I think it's kind of dangerous ground. I think that can change your soul a little bit when you do that, and I don't think it's real. And I've seen people destroy themselves trying to get more likes and kind of going down a path that wasn't them.
Yeah, it gets crazy. All right, so there's a question here about politics. The person actually asked if you'd ever consider running for president, but would you ever consider it?
Thank you so much. I mean, after seeing the Bush's apartment here, why not? No, I'm just kidding.
It's not bad.
Oh, it's so nice. I mean, it's just things are lovely in College Station, I have to say. I'm sure there's good and bad everywhere, but yeah. Politics, I'll give you one example. I have a dear friend who has so much integrity, it's crazy, wanting to do the right thing, and is in the Senate, and the pressure of the other people who are in power and around to get him to compromise the integrity or punish him one way or another for standing for what he believes his constituents want. There's so much of that ugliness, and I think it rips at a good person's soul to the point where they can do it for a short period of time, but not a long time. And I believe that people can go in for a short time, do good, endure that, and then move out. I think they should move out, by the way. I think there should be term limits. Yeah. And they should have to live by the rules they create. Amen? Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I really don't know that I have the stomach for it. And then the whole running for office and trying to get people to like you and vote for you, I don't know. It sounds pretty bad. Your name on signs. Yeah.
So 3-5 years, what do you think?
That I'll run, or what will I be doing?
What will you be doing?
So that is a good.
I mean, the kids, they have graduation ceremonies for kindergarten and everything now. So,
I
I mean, you
know.
got all these things to look forward to.
I know. Well, and my kids are teenagers now, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, and they're awesome, by the way. I love those kids. I mean, not only I love them, I like them. And I know you all have that experience with some of your kids, too. It's just, like, cool. But I don't know what I'll be doing. I have different, whimsical, romantic ideas of, like, maybe I'll go live somewhere for a month in, like, France and wait tables and, I don't know, just do something very poetic like that. And then I have the more probably realistic things. I'd like to do more writing. I'd like to devote myself to some of the things that I can't do right now. But I honestly feel like it's almost silly for me to try to make a plan because the way my life goes, I never know what's coming next, and I never know, I just don't. I don't know.
Well, I'm the father of 3 children, and I can tell you that December is a perfect time for a children's
Is it?
book. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I will, you guys. Maybe I'll blaze a new trail. This is inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
So, she'll be signing books again after the program. So please, if you didn't get a book signed before the program, please take an opportunity to do that. Thank you all for coming out. Great program. And if you're not already supporting the Bush Foundation, please do so. Thank you all.